Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian. Thank you very much for tuning in to today's live streaming, guys. Whether you're watching us on YouTube or on Rumble, I appreciate you all. And I sometimes like to see people speaking also German in the chat. Hello to every one of you guys. So, the extremist government in Israel, headed by Benjamin Netanyahu, rejected the latest ceasefire agreement in Gaza, which had the potential to secure the release of hostages and the horror. In this stream with Mohamad Hasan Sweidan, we discuss what Israel's threats to invade Rafah reveal about Israel and Biden's America. We will also touch on the interview conducted by Dr. Phil with Benjamin Netanyahu and whether Netanyahu has lied to Dr. Phil again on the situation in Gaza. Mohamad Hasan Sweidan, you're a strategic studies researcher, columnist for The Cradle and other platforms, and author of several studies in international relations. I'm very pleased to have you again on this channel. I think you alone, we can discuss together today for the next 45, 50 minutes what's happening in the Gaza Strip and also with this ceasefire agreement. It's very important to shed light on this, especially from your perspective as a researcher. So thank you so much for being on my show again.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great pleasure, actually. Mohammed, we know that Israel rejected the recent ceasefire deal. And I said that this had the potential to secure the release of the hostages and end horror in Gaza, while Netanyahu insists on attacking Rafah, the last remaining unbombed place, probably in the Gaza Strip. With this in mind, some analysts argue that Israel has no more cards left to compromise with the regional powers and also with Hamas, except for violence, this time in Rafah. I would like to know a little bit your thoughts on this ceasefire proposal and why Israel rejected it.
You know, the interesting thing is that it's not researchers who are telling Israel that you don't have any other choice. It's the Americans who are doing that. Secretary Blinken told them that. Secretary Austin told them that, and Biden told Netanyahu that. So I think it became something too obvious to ignore. It's an American assessment that not going towards a political solution and towards a deal means you're just going nowhere. So it's an American assessment. Then it's a logical, reasonable analysis to say that there's nothing more to do inside of Gaza. And I think that to a certain limit, there's a difference between Netanyahu and other parties in Israel. I think many in Israel are convinced today that there's nothing more to do. The problem is with Netanyahu. It's for two main reasons. First, because he knows his political future is threatened, and he knows that once he signs an agreement, he will be held accountable not only for what happened now. He will be held accountable for April 14th. For being hit by Iran. He will be held accountable for October 7th. And he will be held accountable for every mistake that has occurred from that moment till now. And that's what he is afraid of. And that's why he wants to try not to go towards an agreement with Hamas, which threatens his political career. Number two, if you go and really study Netanyahu's background, let's read his books. Let's understand his ideology. Let's understand how he thinks. We can reach a conclusion that he is a person so attached to his ideology. He is from the far right. He doesn't believe in anything called two-state solutions. He doesn't believe in anything other than Israel is living in Palestine. This guy can never accept signing an agreement with Palestinians, giving them their lands. And another thing is that for Netanyahu, for the far right, October 7 was an existential threat. Yes. Once you treat it as an existential threat, then you can't just reach a moment where you sign an agreement with the party that caused this threat. I think these three main reasons are the reasons why Benjamin Netanyahu today, along with the far right, refused any kind of solution or agreement with Hamas.
When I see this situation, When I monitor this ceasefire situation and the explanation that you gave at the moment, I truly see that Netanyahu sees himself that he's going to be trapped if he accepts this ceasefire agreement, and at the same time he wants to restore deterrence, and it's not possible anymore to restore deterrence. Like Israel is like turning in a vicious circle. They cannot restore deterrence with Hamas. What happened in October 7 has happened, and the images and the footage cannot leave the collective memory of the Israelis. In the north, Hezbollah has changed the equations. So, in from whatever side you look at it, Israel cannot restore deterrence, and also with Iran, the attack from
Yes.
Iran was. I mean, I covered this, and I really objectively believe it was successful, regardless of what the mainstream media says in this regard. So, if from whichever side you look, I don't see that the current government in Israel has an invested interest in signing a ceasefire agreement with Hamas or any other party, right?
Yes, exactly, and that's that's what the Americans are telling them too. Uh, and that the problem is that uh, when you speak about deterrence, I think that today Israel faces two main problems. First, it lacks deterrence with its adversaries in the region, Iran, Hamas, Hezbollah, and other parties in the region. And second, which is a very important point, is that Israeli leaders discovered how much vulnerable Israel is, how much it needs nuclear superpowers to protect it from adversaries in the region, how much this entity is weak to a limit that it always needs 3 to 4 nuclear superpowers just to come and save it from the problems and the mess she does in the region. So being not being able to deter your adversaries and being vulnerable to your allies are two problems that are existential for Israel, and that's why that explains the amount of problems for Israeli leaders, and that's why they can't think clearly. They can't go towards an agreement, and and when we speak about the theories of war, they define wars or winning wars as between tactical and strategic, and there's a huge gap between these two. I think, and what Secretary Austin told Netanyahu at the beginning of the war, that try not to turn your tactical wins to strategical defeats. And
Yes.
what Netanyahu is doing today, he is turning these tactical wins to strategic defeats. And in my opinion, today, Rafah, and everything he's gonna do from this day and on is only the noise of his defeat. I think because all assessments, it's not my assessment, it's not assessments in the region, it's assessments all over the world. If you read any article away from the mainstream media, of course, I mean, any subjective article for American research centers, even for Israeli media, if you read them, Yediot Ahronot said yesterday, Israel should sign the agreement and pull itself out of the hole. This is what they believe in. This is what Americans are telling them. This is all the assessments are very clear, but still, the reasons we stated before are what is letting Netanyahu not go towards an agreement. Keeping in mind that after 7 months, and it's important to remember, at the beginning of the war, Netanyahu stated three goals for his war
Yes.
in Gaza. First, to return the hostages. Second, to destroy Hamas. And third, for Gaza to not be a threat to Israel anymore. Well, let's see after 7 months. Hostages are still with Hamas. Hamas isn't destroyed, and Gaza is still a threat to Israel. So all
Yes.
the three goals weren't achieved. And if we think what were the goals of Hamas on the second side, well, Hamas said my goal from October 7 was to have to have hostages and to trade them. Second, for the Palestinian case, to return a leading case worldwide and to protect to protect Jerusalem. And I
Yes.
think if we see what it achieved till today, it still has the hostages and it will never give them without trading. And the Palestinian case returned as a leading case all over the world, and we are seeing what's happening in the US and the universities and everything. So if
Yes.
we assess three goals of Netanyahu weren't achieved, and out of the three goals of Hamas, two are achieved till now, That's why Hamas is willing to sign an agreement. It won the war, while
Mm.
Israel isn't willing to sign an agreement because it didn't achieve anything of what Netanyahu said at the beginning of the war.
Mohammed, correct me if I'm wrong. And I think also there is also one more factor why Netanyahu didn't sign this ceasefire agreement, and that is if he signs this ceasefire agreement, then Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they will withdraw from the government, his coalition will collapse, and this will lead into unprecedented upheaval in the Israeli society, right? Like, we're not talking about himself being standing in front of a court. The society
Yes.
will be in a strong upheaval.
Yes, of course, because because of Netanyahu's decision, for example, let's start from Israel and then go down towards politicians. Because of Netanyahu's decisions and because of Israel's decisions in this war, now Israel is being dragged towards international courts for its genocides. Well, let's see. After the war ends, the far right will just discover how much lies were Netanyahu giving them. He was promising them with so much things to achieve. Well, he didn't achieve anything. So these guys, the far right, will take a stand from Netanyahu, and we will see many divergences inside of Israel, because when the one in power, especially if he's a strong leader like Netanyahu inside of Israel, when the one in power, a strong leader, when he falls, then the whole system falls. Then the weaker ones will try to take advantage of the situation, and we'll see these diversions more and more in Israel. And this is why they are trying the Netanyahu isn't willing to sign the agreement. He knows that once he signs the agreement, this means Israel is facing a failure. It failed militarily, it failed politically, and there's a price to pay inside the Israeli politics. And Smotrich and Ben Gvir are parts of the Israeli politicians that will take a stand, but others will too.
You know what's the ironic thing, Muhammad, in this case, that the collective West and Israel, they accuse the other countries and other leaders of being authoritarian and linking their faith, their personal faith, with the faith of the state and its national security. And then here
Exactly.
comes Netanyahu linking the entire future of Israel with his personal survival.
Yeah,
It's like, what kind of ironic times are we living in, huh? And now
yeah,
we
it's
have
crazy.
Biden comes and says that he will not supply offensive weapons that Israel could use to launch an all-out assault on Rafah. How do you explain this decision? And I would like to know your thoughts if the campus protests had any influence over Biden's decision.
Yeah, first of all, regarding the decision, I think it's naive to think that this decision is because Biden has some empathy with Palestinians inside of Rafah,
Yes.
because from day one, from October 7, he knows where his weapons were going and how the Israelis are using them. And American politicians were saying that, well, this is war, and war means sacrifices and means people will die. So they were trying to give reason for what they were doing. The decision to not give weapons to Israel now is purely related to Netanyahu's decision because it contradicts American interests. America was working in the last couple of years on normalizing relations between Arab states and Israel. So now it
Yes.
has a huge chance to bring Saudi Arabia, a very important country in the region, to normalize its relations with Israel. And once Saudi Arabia does this normalization, then it's expected to many other Arab countries to do so. So the US feels that it has a chance that may not come another time to finish this normalization. And for it to occur, Netanyahu needs to stop the war. It means not go inside Rafah and sign the
Yeah.
agreement. And in change for the agreement, Saudi Arabia is willing to normalize. So if he goes into Rafah, he will threaten the whole normalization process. Means he will threaten the American interests in the region.
Mm.
And when you threaten the American interests, the Americans will retaliate, and that's what they are doing now. So when they reached a point of divergence between Israel's interest and their interest, they took the decision to protect their interests. It's
Yes.
only about that. And let me state one small thing. I think that there's no divergence between Israel and the US. The divergence between Netanyahu and Biden administration. not
Mm.
between the entity and the state. There's a huge difference between that. One of the reasons of, or one of the main reasons of the divergence is how the two parties view Israel. Netanyahu views Israel as a national state which has its own interests, whereas
Yes.
Biden and the Americans view Israel as an entity. It has
Mm.
has a certain job to achieve,
An
and once you don't
extension,
achieve it,
an
exactly, and
extension
once
to
you
the
don't
empire.
achieve exactly, once you don't achieve this job, then you will be punished, and that's
Mm.
what's happening. Netanyahu is dealing with Israel as a national state. Americans are dealing with it as an entity that has a job. So the Americans are trying to pull Netanyahu, pull Israel to return to its normal situation as being an entity in the region. As for the university protests, well, I think it's uh, there's really no effect of these protests in this regard. I mean, only in the regard of not sending weapons
Mm.
because of Rafah, because the Rafah decision is more related to American interests in the region and many other things. But this doesn't mean that protests in the streets don't have an effect. No, as a matter of fact, they do have an effect in many ways. First of all, what worries Israelis today that the people on the streets today are the ones who will be leaders tomorrow. They are the ones who will write in newspapers. They are the ones who will teach students in universities. They are the ones who will have political seats, and that's why Israel is threatened from these guys being on the streets. Second, uh, the U.S. can't afford to have a bad branding of its country. She paid a lot in soft power in the last 20, 25 years, and to just convince the world that, well, my national brand is democracy. I care for people. I care for human rights. Well, where's democracy? Where's human rights today when we see women and students just dragged on the streets? So I think no, there's an effect. And the effect of these protests are not only inside the U.S. but outside the U.S. And it's very important for these students to carry on what they are doing.
I totally agree with you, Mohammed. And in this case, since you mentioned that they wanted to export this brand about themselves or sell it that they're about human rights and democracy and all these cliches, we say in Arabic that they ironed our brains with
Mm.
it in the past decades. Since you mentioned this, I wanted to show the audience what our friend of the channel, Tarek Civil Amar, he is historian from Germany. At the moment, he is an associate professor at Koch University. And this is what he said in this case. I just want to show the audience that what are they even, like beside what they're doing in the Gaza Strip, there is some element in it that they're trying to normalize something. And this is what it is.
There is, if you want, even a bit of a connection to what is happening now in Gaza. Gaza is about normalizing genocide, among many other things. But this is one thing that Gaza is about. Israel and the West are conducting a genocide. That is not just a war, that is a genocide. And they're not letting go of the victims. And we are all being trained, if we accept this, I don't obviously, I hope you don't, but we are all being trained into thinking, into believing that, oh, this is also part of war. Yeah, it's a bit rough at the edges, even for war, but that also comes under war. No, it doesn't. That's genocide, right? They're normalizing genocide in Gaza. If we end up in a world where a limited nuclear war has happened, say 2 nukes, one each side, we are in a world where limited nuclear war has been normalized. Welcome to the future.
Welcome to the future. And that's a very scary future. And if any other country now conducts similar atrocities, commits similar atrocities around the world, the bar for the crime has become too high, right?
Yeah.
So Israel
Yeah.
has normalized it. This is also something that we have to focus on.
Yeah, it's true. But for it's easy for the U.S. to just draw the narrative the way it sees suitable. But I think one of the costs the U.S. is paying because of its support of Israel is that people don't believe it the way they did before October 7.
Yeah.
And we can see, and I think one of the countries that most benefited from October 7 is Russia.
I totally
To a
agree with
certain
you on that.
limit, yeah, to a certain limit, people started searching for the truth of what's happening in Ukraine because they saw that the U.S. is lying in Palestine. So if the U.S. is lying in Palestine, why isn't it lying in Ukraine? And they started searching for the truth, and they are now more people convinced with the Russian narrative because they searched for it, because American hypocrisy gave people a reason to search for the truth in many countries, in many wars, and to see the difference between what the mainstream narrative is and what the truth is.
That's so true. When I spoke with Professor Muhammad Marandi, he said Gaza was an eye-opening for so many other cases, including, he said, about your country, your beloved country, and people were like sold this war, that it's against a dictatorship and it's a revolution. And now, like I remember before October 7, and so many of the American progressives or the European progressives used to come to my Twitter account bashing me for my opinions about Syria. And now they are the ones doing a slow U-turn about even on this case when you explain why the United States is in Syria and what they're doing there. So unfortunately speaking, the blood of the Palestinians were like the candle that is enlightening the hearts and the minds of so many other people. It took tens of thousands of casualties among the Palestinians for so many people to wake up to these bitter realities around the world. I'm really sorry to say this, but I'm just saying the truth from my point of view of how I see these things. And Netanyahu now says, even if the Americans stop sending us weapons, we are ready and prepared to stand alone in this war. And the EU's top diplomat, Joseph Borrell, says the only way Israel won't drop bombs is if they don't have any. So how is Israel going to fight alone in this? I mean, I'm sure that the Americans will not abandon it, but this type of talk, it just feels like one of these Saddam Hussein types of cliche statements, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, when Netanyahu speaks, he speaks to different factions of the society or different parts of the world. This exact sentence is towards the far right inside the country. Inside, it's not the country, inside the entity. He was speaking with the far right inside of Israel and telling them that no, Israel is strong. It doesn't need to depend on other people, on other countries, and we can achieve. But let's see the facts, because I don't want to just say to depend on poems and narratives. Let's state the facts. October 7 occurred. After October 7 occurred, Biden had to come to Israel. Blinken had to come to Israel. Austin had to come to Israel. John Kirby had to come to Israel. Jake Sullivan had to come. The whole U.S. administration just came to Israel to give them the support they need to defend themselves and to return to the deterrence. And with all this, they didn't get anything back. But October 7 occurred, and the whole American administration, and let's not forget, who is America? America, the number one state all over the world, the strongest country, a nuclear country. This very strong nuclear empire came with all its leaders to Israel to help it in such. And at that moment, Israel was still not inside the war. It still didn't use any of its military. It didn't have any casualties. It was still having the military the way it is, but still it needed this American help. Then let's see what happened on April 14. Well, April 14 happened. Iranians told the whole world, you know, I'm gonna tell you some. I'm gonna tell you something funny. On April 13 in the morning, I got a phone call from some TV channel, and they asked me, "Are you at night in Beirut?" I told them yes. Why? And they told me because the Iranians are going to respond tonight, and we want to see if you're available. You know, no, it really happened with me. The whole world, and I was shocked. Oh, a TV channel knows that TV channels know, the Israelis of course know. So the whole world knew that Iran is gonna retaliate, respond at this night, and it was the French, the Americans, the Israelis, the British, the Jordanians. It was NATO. It was many countries in the region just being wanting to help Israel, and they had 8 layers of defense. And
Yes.
still, with the 8 layers of defense, some missiles reached their targets inside of Israel. So let's see what he will do without NATO, without the nuclear power supporting him, without countries in the region supporting him. Facts are clear. Like Netanyahu needed them on October 7, like he needed them on April 14. He can't live one day without the support of NATO, without the support of America. And this is what the Israelis write. We discovered how much vulnerable we are. We are weak. We can't afford being alone in the region. And this is one of the strategic threats for Israel.
I remember in 2006 when the Secretary General of Hezbollah said Israel is weaker than the spider web. And many people didn't understand what did he mean back then, and now you can see the real meaning behind it. And some of the missiles that Iranian missiles that hit Israel, those were the ones that meant to hit Israel. There were so many distraction missiles, like they just distracting the radars, the air defenses, the ones. Yeah, the ones that they wanted to hit with even the older versions of their missiles, they hit the strategic facilities that they wanted to. And the runaways of the airports, for example, they wanted to hit the runaway. They didn't want to kill soldiers. Like this was very, very precise, the way they hit their target. And beside this, I also wanted to ask you about this recent interview of Benjamin Netanyahu with Dr. Phil. I don't know what Dr. Phil is doing. Anyways, he's not like a political correspondent or something. Maybe he was in Israel trying to do his part in supporting the Zionist state there. And Netanyahu, during the interview, claimed that Hamas says in its charter the following, I'm quoting, "Kill every Jew on earth, everywhere you find him. If a Jew hides behind the bush, find him, kill him." It actually said that in the charter, quote ended. YouTube, I'm not calling for killing anyone, please. I'm quoting him what he said, so just be careful about this. And Dr. Phil agreed with Netanyahu, claiming that he himself read the charter of Hamas. What does the Hamas charter say about the Jews in particular when we want to understand their mentality vis-a-vis the Jewish people?
Yeah, well, Hamas charter was released on May 1st, 2017, and it has 42 articles. And Jews are only mentioned in 2 articles out of these 42, in Article 16 and 17. And if you go and read these articles, you can see that the Hamas is trying to differentiate between Jews and Israelis. And they say that the conflict with the Zionists project is not a conflict with the Jews. There's a huge difference between the two. And this is found in Article 17 in the Charter and Article 16 in the Charter. And everyone can go and read it on the internet. And Article 17 states that Hamas rejects the persecution of any person or the detraction of his rights on a national, religious, or sectarian basis, and believes that the Jewish problem, anti-Semitism, and the persecution of Jews are phenomena that are essentially linked to European history and not to the history of Arabs and Muslims. So this is what Hamas is stating in their charter. And it's not only the view of Hamas. I think the only one that doesn't differentiate between Jews and Zionists are Israel and the US. Let's take a brief look about the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act, which is proposed in the US today. It passed the House with 390 votes, and now it will be voted inside the Senate. Well, it adopts a definition of anti-Semitism from an Israeli intergovernmental group, which states that if you attack Israel, then you are attacking Jews. So this definition is what links Zionism to Jews. What's linking these two different things are the Israelis and the Americans. Whereas you can never find any clue or anyone from Hamas, from Hezbollah, it's not only about being a political group. If you go and search inside the Islamic religion, well, the Islamic religion respects Jews, respects all religions in the world. So if you claim that Hamas is a religious group, then it abides by the religion, and the religion is clear. And I'm kind of shocked that today still people believe what Netanyahu says. I think we reached a phase where we know who lies, we know who doesn't lie, and if you read Israeli comments, even Israelis say we don't believe Netanyahu. Why are you guys?
Yes.
Why are you believing him? If we don't do that, and the Israelis do say, well, if we believe someone in the region, the only one in the region we believe is the leader of Hezbollah because he has
Mm.
been honest from day one, and this is what they say. So I think it's not a new thing for Netanyahu to lie, and everyone can Google Hamas charter. Article 16, Article 17 are very clear, and everyone can see them.
Today, when I posted the announcement of our live streaming on X Twitter, and I said, "Has Benjamin Netanyahu lied to Dr. Phil about Gaza again?" And one of our friends, she said, "Did he open his mouth? Then yes, he lied." It's like, and when
Exactly.
Netanyahu posts in Hebrew on X. Just out of curiosity, I want to see what the people say. I mean, the replies are vast majority in Hebrew. So I click on auto translation, and it's like if you read the first 100 comments, I can assure you, like 90% of them, they're bashing Netanyahu, they're calling him that he is a liar and all these things. And you can read. I mean, this is all public information.
Yeah.
Just wanted to reply to
You know,
a friend. Yeah, please go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah, just one point. He reminds me of Zelensky in some place.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the war, I was watching the Ukrainian official TV, and I was also putting on another TV channel that covers the war. In the Ukrainian TV channel, I was shocked to see military guys, Ukrainian military guys, in the Red Square in Moscow,
Yeah.
and they were convincing their people that they entered Moscow and now they are going out. So I think this kind of hypocrisy of lying is in all the Western atmosphere you can find it.
Exactly. I just want to reply to a person who is doxing in the comments. He or she says, "You sell a false narrative every time you turn on your camera." And I would really like to encourage this person to create a YouTube channel and call it Debunking Syriana Analysis, of debunking Kevork Almassian's narratives. That would be a good job. Just debunk the lies that I'm spreading on this channel. That would be serious work for you, in my opinion. And a serious question, like, there is so much like easily verifiable lies being
Yeah.
told by the Netanyahu government and his officials, and the people are asking, why do they lie pathologically over some issues, even when they don't need to lie, because there's some of the cases they don't need to lie, and
Yeah.
despite that they lie, and this is hurting their own cause. Like, what, how is it possible, like, for a spokesperson of the IDF or for a spokesperson of the Israeli government, they're being grilled even by mainstream media outlets with simple facts, and
Yes.
they're unable to restore the image of and the reputation of a government that speaks, that gives truthful information to the press? People can see through.
Yeah, yeah. People can, what Netanyahu is doing. I think he's trying to achieve his goal without taking into consideration that we don't live in the year 2000 anymore. Meaning that there the amount of people that don't go and search for the truth just increased, and the more important thing is that social media have gave people a huge zone to just counter narratives, to just state the truth, state the facts. Internet is now viral, where you can Google whatever you want and you can see what things are. I think it's part of his lying is not taking into consideration the amount of technology found today and how
Mhm.
really people are able to reach the information. And the more important thing, I think he doesn't know to what limit his adversaries have people that work in media and journalism and research and can Google, can search for information. I think one of the differences between us and them is that we have a huge pool of people that are working day and night just to give our narrative, searching for the truth and giving people the truth. If you see how much articles are getting out of the region, how much videos on YouTube, how much video spaces on X and Instagram, there is a very, very huge amount. And that's what's helping us to give people the truth. And I think this is the main reason that led American university students to go on the streets. If this war, one of the important things we achieved is that we were fighting for the narrative. It's the first war in the region where we had the ability to fight for the narrative. It was always American narrative. Well, war in Iraq, it's war on terror. It's like this.
Yes.
Weapons of mass destruction, autocracy, or anything. No, this war, they tried to give it a terror reason by saying Hamas is ISIS. But we were able to counter this narrative, and we had our own narrative, and it reached the world, and that's what made university students go to the streets.
Actually, the other day I watched a video for Antony Blinken. I don't know, he was in a conference, and when he was asked, and he said something about TikTok and how overwhelming is the pro-Palestine voices in TikTok, and the war of narratives is shifting in favor of the Palestinians, and that's scary because this younger generation is going to grow up, and they are going to become the next future leaders. They're going to become the doctors. They're going to become the professors. That's very scary for them. In 20 years, in 30 years, the shift is going to be tremendous in the United States. They pushed for this wokeism, and it exploded to their faces. It's like, who would have expected Greta Thunberg to come for the Palestinian cause? You know, like just a few years ago, who would have expected that these people would focus on a major real issue that is happening? Because every other issue that they try to convince the younger generation to believe in, it was a distraction from the real killing that was happening around the world, right? And unfortunately for them, this has backfired to their faces. Mohammed, the last question would be, I know that we don't do predictions, but from the realities on the ground that we discussed today, do you see that Israel will go into an all-out offensive against Rafah, or it will halt this operation?
Well, let's first state what's for sure is going to happen, and then we'll see how it's going to happen. Well, if you read the American assessments, and I really try to make sure to read the American assessments. If you read the American assessments, they say that if Israel goes into Rafah, then it's going towards a failure. And this is what they are saying, what the Americans are saying. So I think Israel Netanyahu has two choices: either to go militarily inside of Rafah and fail militarily, and then has to sign an agreement and fail politically, or he has to go and fail politically now. So the choice of failing politically is achieved, but it's either prolonged with Rafah or not prolonged without Rafah. I think he is going inside of Rafah. The level of military work inside of Rafah, well, it depends on how much the Americans pressure him, but he's going to go inside of Rafah. But at the end of the road, he has no choice other than signing an agreement with Hamas.
Yep. Mohammed, I already put your X account and your articles as a columnist on the Cradle in the description below. Is there any other platform that you share your articles the audience can also go and read for you?
Currently on the Cradle, and I publish studies in the Consultative Center for Studies and Documentation, but they are long studies. They're 50, 60 to 100 pages. So whoever is interested, he can find these studies.
Please send me when this stream is over. I would also add it in the description. There are many people who follow this channel. They read longer research as well, and they are really knowledgeable about what's happening. That would be also interesting for them. So, guys, it goes without saying, Mohammed's X account is in the description below. His column on the Cradle is in the description below. I will also add the links for the research. You can also hit him a follow. Mohammed, thank you so much, really, for being with me today. It was an amazing stream. Your knowledge is very important, insightful, and people need to hear perspective coming from West Asia. I'm almost fell for it. I called it Middle East, but
thank you for having me, and thank you for this channel. It's very important. And after October 7, we knew how much important this kind of actions are.
Indeed, and that's why they try to suppress and even fining people for saying something. I'm being very careful. I live in Germany, so I don't have suicidal thoughts, and I'm being really just trying to be educational to the people, showing them different sides of the story. They can watch mainstream media and they can learn probably what they want to learn about this conflict, and they could also come to channels like this and take a different opinion, receive a different opinion, and they make up their mind. I'm not trying to tell them that this is correct and this is wrong. But if you guys disagree, you can create, as I mentioned, your YouTube channel and debunk my my reporting in this case. So guys, if you like to support this independent channel, which is 100% only financed by the followers of Syriana Analysis, you can become a patron. The link is scrolling on the screen, patreon.com/Syriana Analysis. And I will see you on Monday, 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.